over there somewhere? To the southern part of Afghanistan, which is occupied by the British military, which is in there supervising the drug business. And the drug business is done by natives of the country who are told if they don't want to get shot, they will grow hashish and other things. Produce heroin. And the heroin market of the world is now centered on this part of Afghanistan. And the British, by occupying it with their troops, are managing it. So all the drug trafficking of the world is now centered as Hong Kong, the same way now Dubai. It's the center of intellectual filth and other kinds of filth of the planet. And the other Arab states around there are very embarrassed when you start talking about Dubai these days, because it's a very dirty place, evil. So this is the problem. The British Empire, which is Prince Philip, this crazy thing, the Copenhagen Congress, all these things are part of the intended destruction of humanity. This is worse than Adolf Hitler, what this amounts to in its effect. It has to be destroyed. We're going to repair what we destroyed in terms of the auto industry's potential, other industries' potential. We're going to repair, we're going to end this slavery to foreign control of food supply. We're going to assure food sovereignty for every nation. Nations don't have national security now because they don't have food sovereignty. The food on which they depend is grown in another country. And it's international forces, not any of the countries that control the food supply. And the food supply is being destroyed deliberately by the international cartels, the financial interests. Those cartels must be broken, their rights taken away, because every nation has a right to food security. And this policy of Truman and of Churchill and company was the policy of the United States, which was reflected in, say, in the 1970s by Henry Kissinger and company, who proposed that Africa's population should be kept poor, not grow, not increase, and should be prevented from consuming the raw materials which Britain and the United States reserved for their own future. So this tradition of this Anglo-American tradition, which it became under Truman, was prevalent. It is the free trade system and this globalization process which have created the vulnerability where the nations of Europe, Western Europe, Central Europe, have no sovereignty anymore. No nation on the continent of Europe, Western and Central Europe, has any sovereignty today. They're colonies of the British Empire. It was what the Queen was referring to the other day, last week, and talking about that the British Empire, called the Commonwealth, controls 1/3 of the world and is out to control more, which is what she said. The Queen, the little Queen, said that. Every part of the world is on the verge of bankruptcy, except Russia and China. Because the Russia and China agreement made just last month, that treaty agreement, establishes the relationship between them as that of credit system to credit system. The Chinese took their credit that they had, which was money owed by the United States to China, and said, we're going to invest it. We're not going to sit there just with a bank account. We're going to invest it. We're going to get something good out of it. And the Russians said, we'll get something good out of it. We'll work together. And other nations in Asia, through Chinese negotiation and Russian negotiation, are pushing this with other countries. We must cooperate. At least the President Putin, Yakunin, Medvedev government, they're pushing this. We want the countries of South Asia to be involved in this. Because with that combination and with the resources we have, we know that great good can be done there. What we are experiencing now is not a recession, is not a depression. We're experiencing a global breakdown crisis with the characteristics of Weimar Germany in 1923. The triple curve is the only competent representation of what the crisis is we're dealing with. And by that standard, this system is now bankrupt and is about to go into a steep Weimar-style collapse unless we intervene to stop it. The only thing that has happened of any significance to tend to stop that is what happened in the agreement between Russia and China, both on the presidency and the government levels, in setting up the recent agreement. That's the only thing that will work. And the only place you can't do it in Europe, because Europe's a slave state, Western and Central Europe. They have no sovereignty anymore. They're part of the Euro system. They're slaves. China, in my view, is a civilized nation at the time that Europe is not, especially the British. China had been used as a cheap labor market and allowed to have certain industries, generously, but not allowed to have the technology it needed. China was cut off for various reasons from access to certain technologies which China should have. We also have all other kinds of problems, including this idiocy in Afghanistan. We have to break that. The Afghanistan problem is a British problem. The British are running a drug operation in Afghanistan. Everything is being run. The military operation is a drug operation. And this Dubai thing was a key to it. We have to break the British Empire. You know, England will survive nicely. A lot of people in England would be happy to get rid of the empire. Let me suggest something to you. You ever hear of Osama Ben Laden? Do you know what part of Pakistan he's living in now? Do you know why he's never been caught? Certain British and Saudi and Americans are protecting him. That's why. But he's not the guilty party. The guilty party was the BAE, the British BAE, together with the Saudi influences which financed that operation called 9/11. And a lot of our people would like to have certain forces go in there and take them out, bring them back to expose what they really are and clear up this mess of what really happened in 9/11. It's a British-Saudi operation. 9/11. An orchestration of an operation against the United States with complicity of certain elements associated with government, political elements, international elements associated with government. When did I say we're going to have a 9/11? I didn't call it 9/11. I said in the beginning of January that year that we had to expect a major terrorist operation inside the United States used for the purpose of installing the authority of the George W. Bush administration. We were looking all over the place we had an operation in Northern Virginia and around Washington, very serious. We had this little event in Italy. Suddenly we had this thing in New York. I knew immediately what it was. It was what I knew was going to happen. Somebody on the British side with something complicity inside the United States was going to pull a stunt like this. Because you had a totally incompetent, intolerable president, George W. Bush Jr. A piece of crap. How did this thing ever slide into the presidency? And I knew that they were going to pull a crisis. And it had to be an act of terrorism. Either war or terrorism. And we got the terrorism. And I know that the evidence exists that the BAE and certain high-level Saudi influences ran part of the operation and therefore probably all of it. It was run to ensure and install a relative dictatorship on behalf of the George W. Bush administration. To some people that's a shocking thing to say. To me it's not. Because that's the way I read history. That's what happened to us. And then we got this president as a result of the George W. Bush administration. But we have also in the presidency and institutions, we have people who have an understanding of this, though most people don't have the temperament to bring it out publicly as I do. But it's known to other people. My job is to say,